That's Marco D'Amico, RG Media. Welcome to the offseason for the Montreal Canadiens as we look at the NHL Draft, where the Canadiens in the first round have picks 16 and 17. We've spoken about this over the course of the last few weeks now when the lottery was announced and we knew kind of what the Montreal Canadiens' position was as it relates to kind of what Marco's been telling us about how this draft isn't star loaded, star front loaded anyway. Um, what percentage, give me a number, you would put on the Canadiens management moving up the draft? Is that a realistic option at this point today?
I would put it at high to them wanting to trade up.
Yeah.
I would put it at low to them being able to do so.
We talk about the Memorial Cup, the Moncton Wildcats,
Yeah.
Caleb Desnoyers, right?
Yeah.
I see mock drafts him going 6, maybe obviously top 10. You see top 10 higher than 6?
I think he may go top 5.
Top 5. So
Oh yeah.
I mean, I see several media outlets talking about, Caleb Desnoyers would be the perfect fit for the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, that's as realistic as the Canadiens getting Sidney Crosby in a trade with Pittsburgh, right? Like,
No, I
unlikely.
think getting Caleb Desnoyers is more realistic than getting Sidney Crosby.
More realistic.
Yeah, by a hair.
So what about trading up in the draft? I mean, is there a target that you can talk to today? Like, I'm going to defer to you here. I'm not really in the weeds on the draft compared to what you're going to bring to the table, obviously.
I think
So
I
go
think it's
ahead.
tough, Shaun. I think it's really tough because a lot of the teams that are picking in that Goldilocks range that the
Yeah,
Canadiens would have to get into
a
are
Goldilocks
new
range.
rebuilding teams, right?
Right.
Nashville, not a team that thought they would be rebuilding right now,
Yeah.
right? So they want to
Yeah.
get their pick. Teams are like, oh well, they're going to want to turn it around real quick. They have an aging core. They're just going to end up, retooling and doing the Mark Bergevin thing where they keep their
Right.
veterans and then they inject youth. Or if you're trying to trade for that 5th overall pick, you better give them a piece that could help them right now for many years, which is
Right.
ironically also what the Montreal Canadiens are looking for themselves. So that doesn't make much sense. We talked about the Boston Bruins. Boston Bruins doesn't make much sense either. They're looking to retool quick. I'd see them. My 2 cents, hot take.
Yeah.
I'd see
Yeah.
the Boston Bruins trying to jump to like 3 or 4 rather than pick at 7, just because there may be a player that they would want, or they would want to maybe draft that potential top 6 center to really kind of give them that depth that they don't have anymore with Bergeron, Krejci gone. So,
Sure.
I don't necessarily think that works either. We already talked about Philly. They doesn't make much sense there either. So then you get to 8. Who's at 8? Seattle. But at that point, I can guarantee you that Caleb Desnoyers is gone.
Right.
There is no way he gets past Boston at 7. 0. And I don't even think he gets past Nashville at 5. So this is my 2 cents. My hottest take, if the Chicago Blackhawks don't have Michael Misa on their table when it comes time, they're going to have a choice between Frundell and Desnoyers. And of the two, I think Desnoyers is the true center. I think Frundell eventually ends up on the wing. And that's already a problem for them when they have a guy like Connor Bedard, who many see as needing, like Matt Barzal, as many see as having to shift to the wing to be as effective as need be.
Who do you think is going to be the best center if you had to, like, Misa, Desnoyers, Well, you mentioned Frundell, Hagens.
Yeah.
I think
it's Misa, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. I think just exceptional player, player, great interview, mature, well dedicated to the craft, really improved his two-way game this season.
Yeah.
Led the OHL in scoring, second in the OHL in goal scoring as a 17-year-old. Yes, granted, it was his 3rd season because he was granted exceptional status like John Tavares, like Connor McDavid, like Shane Wright. But really, unlike Shane Wright, lived up to that hype in being a 2-point-per-game player, and Saginaw being the powerhouse that they were this year. Just, to me, it just seems like a shoo-in. And for a team like Chicago, I mean, I'm not a fan of teams that intentionally just put out borderline AHL rosters to tank and pick top 3. But, the Islanders winning the lottery really screwed the pooch for the Chicago Blackhawks. Man, Michael Misa was just a perfect fit for them.
Right.
And the only snowball's chance they have now is the Islanders, deciding to, screw the consensus and then draft the hometown boy and James Higgins, so that they don't have another John Tavares situation where he leaves at free agency.
When we look at the Canadiens trying to move up, though, like, is someone like Roger McQueen, big, massive center, mock drafts have him somewhere in the 10 spot? Because when you look at where the Canadiens are, is Justin Carbonneau out of Blainville and the Armada on their radar?
I don't think they'll need to trade up.
Amount of defensemen around where the Canadiens are scheduled to draft, Marco.
I like the idea. I think, first of all, we need to put the idea of Caleb Desnoyers to bed.
Yes,
you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it in the media. Oh my God, the Canadiens need to draft him. Not happening. Not unless they trade a major piece, and I'm not talking about Mike Matheson, a major piece on their lineup that will hurt them next season.
Right.
For not being there. And then they're going to have to wait for Desnoyers to develop to take that kind of impact and bring it to the team long term. So it would be a step back to potentially take a step or two forward. I keep hitting my mic. I'm sorry, guys.
Very demonstrative.
So it is not necessarily the way that they want to go. But I like the way that you bring up Roger McQueen, right? Justin Carbonneau is probably not going to be a guy you need to trade up for. Probably going to be available in that 14 to 18 slot. But, Roger McQueen, if he slides because of the back injury, that's first line talent, in my opinion. And if he's available there, the one thing we haven't talked about, everybody's talking about packaging the 2 first-round picks. The Canadiens have 2 second-round picks in the first half of the second round. Right? Think about it. 41 and 49. Yes. Well, 49.
Exactly.
Just on the outside of the second half, but you know what I'm saying. You just 41 and 49. When you have pick 16 or 17, using one of them can get you from 16 to 12,
right,
or 16 to 13, right? And at that point, you got a team like Detroit at 13. 13. The Rangers are at 12, if I'm not mistaken.
Crazy.
Or no, 13 is Columbus. I apologize. 13 is Columbus. 14 is Detroit, and then 15 is Vancouver. So, one of those teams could potentially say, my guy's off the board. I'm not feeling this player. He's falling. Maybe we don't need a guy like that. For example, I don't necessarily think that a team like the Detroit Red Wings would need a Roger McQueen if he's falling, for example. Right. They've already drafted Marco Kasper. They already have Dylan Larkin. Nate Danielson is playing in Grand Rapids. They have centers, right? So potentially they turn around and try to find. They're saying to themselves, I trade down a little bit. Maybe Jackson Smith or Aitchison is going to be available at 16, and we can bolster our left defense depth at that point. Or we go and get a bigger winger that we think like a Carbonneau, or a Lyndon Lakovich later on, and we pocket the second round pick. Could happen, right? So there are teams in that kind of a situation, and I think that's where the Canadiens can be aggressive, is trading into that 12 to 14, like 11 to 14 slot, 11 to 15 slot.
So not getting greedy, in other words, like if they're going to move up, it'll be a modest move for a very specific type of player. And we'll get into some of those targets that we think can be attractive to the Canadiens. And
absolutely. But I think there's a lot of, we talked about this in another episode where, like, last year, nobody thought that you would have a Salayev, Dickinson, Bouillon available in the teens, right?
Right.
And it was just such good value because these are potential top of the lineup players that you're getting in the teens of a draft. That speaks to the quality of the draft. Well, I don't necessarily think you're going to get top of the lineup players here, but there's definitely players that are going to be available in the teens that have top 6 ability. And I think that's the key, right? Whereas if you're drafting 16, 17 this year, more often than not, they're trending to be middle 6 players with a chance of being a third liner. So because the Canadiens, like you said it, right? They have so many prospects. They have so many picks coming. And then you have to factor in all the additional roster space. They're going to need to sign these guys. They have a 50 contract limit. Mm-hmm. So you're going to need to turn quantity into quality. And if you don't find trades that improve your roster right now, then you're going to have to get better pieces with value that you're going to be able to inject into your lineup quicker. So to me, I think it makes sense to dangle, and they've already done it, right? They did it last year with Michael Hage. They dangled Colorado's 2nd round pick and a 7th round pick to the LA Kings to move up from 26 to 21. They moved 5 spots for a late 2nd and a 7th. So that just goes to give you an idea. The cost to move up is a little higher as you go up into the draft, and then much higher once you get into the top 10.
Sure.
But, dangling a mid-2nd round pick with the 16th overall pick should be able to get you 12th or 13th overall.
Let me ask you this here.
If the team wants to move back.
But last question here. Would you say, educated guess, that these decisions to move up, trade up in the draft, are these wheels put in motion? Have they already been put in motion, or are they more likely to be really put in motion the day of the first round? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to get, what's Ken Hughes doing now? What's occupying his time? Trying to move up the draft, trying to amateur scout the draft and land on his picks? Like, I'm just trying to sort out how the schedule is.
I think right now what they're doing is they're setting, well, I mean, I could tell you, in fact, they're setting up their draft board.
Right.
So right now, you have a board, you're going 1 to, generally NHL lists are like 1 to 250 players, but really the focus is on 1 to about 60. And especially with the Canadiens, I'd go probably 1 to 80 because of the many 3rd round picks they have, right? So you have that dressed up. And you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it starts getting juicy around 10 to 15 for the Canadiens. Maybe, to be fair to the scouting team, 10 to 20. You're checking, because there's also, we haven't even talked about this, but there's also the potential of being able to trade back.
Yeah.
Why would they trade back? Well, you probably get, a lot of people will be like, they don't need more picks. Well, what happens if they and we're going to talk about potential targets, but what happens if they trade back and they get a 2026 2nd round pick?
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they already have Columbus's, they have their own. And then if they were to get a 3rd, you get to trade deadline next year. If you're in the playoff mix, then it's not that big a deal to trade a 2nd round pick because you've already got 3.
Yeah.
And you still get a player that you'll like. Like there are players in the late 20s that have the same potential as players trending for 16, 17, or sorry, I said the late 20s, the early 20s that have the same potential as 16, 17. Like you can get a guy like Justin Carbonneau right now at 15, 16, but you could potentially get a guy like Malcolm Spence at 20, 21. And they have similar, potential, but 5 spots later, but you get that 2nd round pick, right? So you don't necessarily know. So there's a potential to trade. When you have 2 picks, you can go either way, right? So the thing with me is the Canadiens are in a situation where they can control the flow of the draft. When you have 2 picks back to back, you can dictate, right? Because usually when a team, you're sitting down and you're assessing your list, the team is trying to project who teams are going to take. When you have 2 picks back to back, it is impossible to predict. Because are they going to go 2 forwards? Are you going to have 2 picks and not go 1 forward, 1 defenseman to bolster? Are they already in conversations to trade it away and you need to guess who they're trading for? Then you're ended up calling them to try to move up, and that's how that story starts. So I think I like the idea of being flexible. I know a lot of people want to trade the picks for current players, but I honestly believe, and we're going to get into the targets in a bit, but I honestly believe that there will be players available on the teams that could be worth trading up for. And, if there was a draft for the Canadiens to start packaging picks to move up, it's this one.
Marco D'Amico at MN D'Amico online and through RG Media, in season, off season, all season. Marco, great stuff as always. I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being a loyal supporter. Like, subscribe, support us by supporting our sponsors at betonline.ag, a trusted space in the online gaming community for the better part of 30 years. Marco, thank you so much, and looking forward to what's on tap when we reconvene in a week's time with a whole new batch of stuff, because there is no off season. Marco, thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure, guys. Enjoy.